Welcome into this week's episode of the Dynamis podcast, where we have a recent friend that I met from the fire department up here in King County named Chad. And Chad's just a really cool guy. And Chad's got some really cool stuff going on. Chad's an entrepreneur. He's a businessman. He's a family man. He's a godly man. He's a leader in the community. And Chad is really an inspiration to a lot of men in the community because Chad leads a faith-based life and he really is led where the Lord leads him. And he just has a lot of wisdom to share. So Chad, welcome, man.
Man, thank you, Tim. That's an awesome intro. And hopefully I can live up to that in some way during this podcast.
Dude, you're living it every day, my man. You're pushing people and encouraging people. I think something that you have that's a really special tool is you just have this superpower to listen and coach and encourage. And you're such a good friend in the way that you follow up and you're encouraging. I remember when I was making this transition out of fire, really walking into uncertain territory, you were walking the same exact road as I was walking. And every day I'd get a text from you. Hey, I'm thinking about you today. I'm praying for you today. How can I help you today? Every week, a check-in, a phone call. Anything I did, whether it was like the barbecue business or the mortgage business or the real estate, you're always promoting my content. And not only me, everybody that's in your circle and your network. And dude, that's a huge gift that you have. And man, I'm really grateful to know you and be the beneficiary of some of those gifts.
Yeah. Looking back, there's this theme that I heard the other day. When in doubt, focus out. Meaning if you've got uncertainty in your life or you're pushing through something uncomfortable, you're trying to become a greater version of yourself, and you've got those moments where you're just kind of struggling or you're not feeling at your highest, that is the best time to focus out, meaning find those people in your lives, find the people in your community that you can encourage, that you can pour into, that you can help bring them up to the next level. And that's really been kind of the theme for me through this whole transition. It puts a smile on my face, and I know that it's made an impact for others.
I love that. I know you just got back from Dallas. You were out there eating some barbecue. What were the takeaways that you came home with?
Number one, Texas barbecue is better than Georgia barbecue. Man, they had it figured out. The trip to Dallas was phenomenal. It was an opportunity for me to get around people that are on a different level than me in some areas, and for me to also share where my strengths are at with those groups. It was a phenomenal opportunity. But here's the deal. And when you get a team together, whether it's a business or in your family or whatever, when you get a group together and you clearly cast that vision and everybody's pointed in the same direction, it's impactful. It is powerful. It was amazing to see the power of vision, the power of prayer too.
You need community. It's very clearly spelled out. You have to be in community and you have to be in proximity of people that are pushing you to be better, to grow, to stretch, to be uncomfortable. You should really be targeting those opportunities and looking for that discomfort rather than shying away from it. It's what's going to get you to the next level. We had our first investor meetup last night, Pints and Properties. For me, it's like not a problem to get up and stand in front of people and host a room, but there's this level of discomfort. Like, who am I to put on this event? Why are these people here? And why do they want to listen to me? And what value do I have to offer? And it's just really like overcoming that mental battle, because I had so many people message me like, wow, I made that great contact last night. The meeting was amazing. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. But none of that would have happened if you submitted to the fear and didn't make yourself get out into that discomfort. The audience of this podcast is people like, hey, let's get to the next level. Let's punch above our weight class. And a lot of that is learning to overcome the space in between your ears here and lean into that fear and discomfort. And that's something that, Chad, you're really good at. I mean, you lean in hard, man. You lean in hard to discomfort.
There's this theory called the imposter syndrome. And so the imposter syndrome is anytime that you start to push your limits and you're stepping into a position that you're not yet qualified for fully, but you have the skill sets to be able to lean into that and get uncomfortable. There's a spot that our brains start to tell us or question, are you even good enough for this? Like, what do you think you have to be able to offer to this group? Or why do you think you can do this? And that imposter syndrome, anytime anybody is going to step out of their comfort zone and push into the next level, they're going to experience that. The key is that you've got a disciplined skill set that you're stepping into that with. And when you step into it, you commit all the way, that you put the pieces in place and that you believe in yourself and that you understand that voice in your head is just that initial push that you need to confirm that you are moving to the next level. If you're not getting that imposter syndrome, you're not pushing to the next level. You're staying comfortable. And anytime that we're staying comfortable, we are not growing. And so I get excited when I feel that imposter syndrome start to creep in, because I know, okay, now I'm starting to get into something special and I'm actually pushing into the next level. It's not this pat on the back saying I'm doing really good. If I don't hear that voice going, are you really qualified? Then I'm not pushing it. And I don't want anything to do with that. I want to take it to the next level up.
It's crazy because you start to crave that discomfort. People listening are probably like, dude, there's no way I crave putting myself in this position and getting uncomfortable. But the reason that you start to crave this discomfort is because when you have these experiences a number of times and you force yourself into it and you push through to the other side and you realize the only thing preventing me from getting there in the first place was this make-believe scenario in my mind. And so you start to realize like, okay, I must feel this to taste this fruit. And so if you're sitting there, there's this like epiphany of like, oh, I'm not getting uncomfortable. I'm not pushing to the next level. Therefore, I'm stagnant. And if you're stagnant, you're dying. And so this weird part of your brain starts to like kick on of, hey, time to go make yourself uncomfortable. It's time to grow. It's time to grow. And there's that saying like risk favors the bold, or what is that? Success favors the bold, or something like that, right? There's that old adage. And it's true. Like it takes individuals pushing into the edge, the cusp of discomfort to break through, to set up a structure of systems so that other people can follow successfully behind, operate those systems, and then that individual can continuously push again and again and again. And if you're not willing to put yourself in that position, like you're just not going to taste the fruit. You said two things that I want to hit on because I think they're so important. You said you were talking about imposter syndrome, right? Like, who am I? Who am I to stand here in this room and give this information? Like, why are people listening to me? And I will tell you, like, personally, I battle that almost every day. But I heard a speaker one time at an event, very successful, multi-millionaire, his business generates millions of dollars every year, who said he struggled with imposter syndrome as well. And he thought to himself one day, like when he was just getting started, he's like, listen, why not me? Instead of like, who am I? He started asking the question, like, why not me? And if you think about it, like, God made us in his image. We are formed in God's image. If that is true, if we believe that, why would we submit our lives to like mediocrity, to just being like this like existence where we're just surviving? Like that's not what God created us to be. He created us to like step fully into our full selves, to put out full effort to get to the next level. So why not me? The other thing you said, you got to commit 100%. And I'm going to use this metaphor because it's in my brain all the time when I think about doing something new. When I was a kid, I grew up in Colorado. I grew up in the Rocky Mountains, like 10,000 feet elevation of my high school. And we skied all the time. It was daycare. We got dropped off and we went skiing. Of course, when you're a young man, you hang out with other young men. What are you naturally going to do? You're going to like push each other more and more and more out of your discomfort zone. So that means like black diamonds, and then it means going through the trees, and then it means jumping off the cliffs. Well, eventually we ended up in the terrain park, and there's these massive, like huge kicker jumps in the terrain park, and they're icy and it's scary. You're hucking hundreds of feet and you're probably getting, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to, depending how big you go, 50 feet in the air. It just depends. And I remember like standing at the top of this jump, terrified, like frozen in fear, and just being like pelted with comments like, go, you know, like chicken, come on, go. So finally I went, but I was hesitant. I didn't commit. I kind of like slowed down. I didn't want to go that fast. Well, at the top of that jump is a 20-foot drop to a flat landing. And if you don't commit, guess what happens? You're landed on concrete flat and it hurts like hell a lot. And I did that for years. I like went off the jump, but I never committed. And I'm falling 25 feet, and my knees are hurting, my butt's hurting. And like, dude, it was miserable. I like dreaded going to the terrain park. And one day I was like, I'm sick of feeling this. Like, I'm sick of this 25-foot fall. And I was like, who cares? You know what? Like, what do I have to lose? I'm going for it. And I remember I just turned my snowboard, didn't speed check. I committed fully. And this crazy thing happened. I launched off this jump and I cleared the flat part and I perfectly intercepted the down transition. And I was like, whoa, that was so easy and so nice. And it felt good. It wasn't painful. And all it took was me in my mind fully committing to what I was doing. And all of a sudden, everything got way easier because I just had that 100% commitment.
Yeah, 100%. So how many businesses do most people start and fail before they finally get that one? I think the number is somewhere like around 6 or 7 on average before really successful businesses launch. How many times have they not committed fully in there? And that is the limiting factor, that they didn't go all in. Eric Thomas has this saying, no net. And his mindset on this is if he's invited to go to circus or like a trapeze artist or something, and they're walking 100 feet up on a tightrope and there's a net underneath them, he doesn't want to go. It's just not exciting for him. The fact that there's a plan B is not something that he's into or excited about. But if you take that same person and you put them 40 or 50 feet up on a tightrope and there's no net underneath them and they go all in and they walk across, that's something he's going to be excited about. And I think there's so much for us just as business owners, entrepreneurs, fathers, husbands, going all in, taking that net out from underneath us and just going all in and focusing on committing fully to our task at hand. I think more of us would succeed if we didn't know that there was a plan B, right? Just stick with plan A and commit and go for it.
It's amazing. I say this all the time. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you have to, when you have no choice, you know? And I think like so many people just never put themselves in that position because it's scary, man. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like it's freaking scary.
Yeah. You said something a minute ago that two things popped in my head. Number one is you talked about bringing people in behind you or bringing people up around you. And this mindset of if one man can, so can I. And so as I look out into the things that I want for my marriage, for my family, for my business, for just our future, and I see those things in the distance that I want, I find the people that embody that and I study them to see what they're doing, how they're doing it, what kind of disciplines they have in place, skill sets. And then I determine in my head that if one man can, so can I. As we're constantly trying to level up, just finding those people that are that one step or those 2 steps, 3 steps ahead of us and studying them, asking to be mentored by them and getting that information in. Now, you also said bringing people up around you. And so there's a really important part or a brotherhood or a group of people with a common purpose and encouraging each other in that and that sharpening that takes place. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And I did a reel on this a little while back. I believe that there's 3 levels to that verse. And if you picture just a sharpening stone that you would pick up on Amazon, there's 3 layers to it. There's a really abrasive edge. And this abrasive edge is those coaches, those mentors that we really push ourselves to get in their presence, to learn from them. The stuff that they have for us is really grinding down the rough edges on us, starting to make that initial cut on our knives, the knives of our lives, our skill set, that stuff. The middle setting is our peers. It's the tribe around us. It's the people that encourage us and we encourage them. They pour into us with some kind of knowledge and wisdom about what their experience, and we can do the same thing for them. And then that third stage, I think this is one of the most important stages, and it's easy to forget about. And that's bringing the people up that are under you or a couple steps below you and sharing that skill set with them. That's that really fine edge that as we're sharpening each other and as we're encouraging other people, teaching skill sets particularly gets that final or just razor sharp edge on your skill set, on your life. That to me is what Proverbs 27:17 says. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
All 3 of these things in combination are necessary to our progression and our development. Like this is
100%.
necessary for us to like step fully into the image that we were created to live. So I guess this, first of all, sounds like a book idea to me. It sounds like you're going to start writing a book, and I would expect that in the near future. You'll have to keep us posted on that. But you know, I'm curious, like, how do you find this? Like, how do you find people in these individual stages of sharpening? Like, how do you know who's a rough stone that you need in your life, who's like the medium and who's like the fine? What do you do? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think on just personally, here's what I do, and I kind of alluded to it a minute ago. I look at the direction that I want to go or something that I want to achieve. Let's just say it's in business. Say I want to start up a business or add a service to one of my businesses, and I start searching for people that offer that. And it's amazing with social media and with the internet what you can see. Now, you've got to use some discernment, right? Because there's the Instagram, everything's perfect posts, but then there's the people that are real and they're transparent. And if you follow them long enough, you'll see in there that, man, these guys they're truly grinding it out. They are pushing into their discomfort zone. They're growing. And I think when you see that person that has achieved a really high level of success, but they're not comfortable there, they continue to push ahead. that's a great person to start aligning with. And I think as you start to
Mm.
align with somebody like that, especially if you don't have your blinders on and you start to see who's moving in that same direction, who's also chasing that same level of success or achievement, then you can start bringing those people in around you and creating that peer group. I think one of the biggest things is that takes effort out of us. That takes us going to people and making those connections, just like you with your pints and properties. It takes somebody saying, hey, they can do it. Why can't I do it? And then start to bring people around you that are also interested in that same thing. So with social media and the networking capabilities that are out there with it, there really isn't an excuse for why you can't surround yourself with people that are pushing themselves, pushing their limits as well. And that's the way I do it. Find the target I want to shoot at, and then find the people that are going the same direction, and I reach out to them.
And then what about the medium level? Like, okay, so now we've knocked down like the raw steel. We sort of have a shape on the edge. We can see like the direction we want to go. How do we get to the next sharpening stone?
Yeah, the second side of that is just when you pick out that target, open up those blinders a little bit, take them off, and start looking around to who else is going to that same target. If you start seeing the same couple of people commenting on the post that you're commenting on, send them a message. Or it could be as
Mm.
simple as you want to push into this area, starting up a podcast per se, starting up some kind of a group chat on a platform. Make an Instagram page of something that you attain to be, and be super honest and transparent in there of like, hey, I'm a dad that doesn't have it all figured out, but I want to have this amazing skill set as a father. And so I'm going to post something a couple times a week that pours into that group. And you're going to naturally get surrounded by people that have that same mission. And that is your tribe, that middle level to that sharpening stone.
Yeah, so I guess the people that are trying to go the same direction, that have an attraction to where you're trying to get, you're using each other to bounce ideas and sharpen each other. And then for the fine edge, you're saying when we make our razor fine edge, it's a hand down, it's a hand up, like in mentorship. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%. So I wake up every single morning, and I've got prayer time, Bible reading time, and journaling time. And the journaling part that I love the most is going back a handful of months or years and looking at what kind of journal entries I'm making. And I think if we take that same mindset, and as we're doing that business activity or whatever this focus is that we're talking about for sharpening each other and remembering where we've come from, and you start to recognize those people that are around you that are in that same position, it's such a exciting thing when you get reached out to by that person that's a level or two up, and they say, hey, I see something special in you. I can see the future that you can't quite see yet because I've been there. And here's something that I think you should do. Or do you want to meet up and grab coffee once a month for an hour and see how I can encourage you? That type of thing. Just remembering where you came from and diving into that.
Yeah, in Napoleon Hill's book, Think and Grow Rich, he talks about like the absolute necessity of masterminds. And it's not because
Mhm.
like everybody in the room has the answers. It's just like the proximity of like-minded individuals who are pushing you. And I think like something that's really overlooked, especially from the outside of people who haven't entered into the journey of like this massive growth or entrepreneurship, is that it's extremely isolating and lonely. I honestly don't really think the world is aware of how flippin' lonely it is. And there's been moments in my own journey, Chad, where like the gas tank is empty, I'm running on fumes, and I have no one to even talk to about what I'm struggling with, because what I'm struggling with is so unique to me this week, my mental state. And there'll be times where you just like reach out to me and you'll say something like, hey man, you're going to win. Like you're creating something. I can feel the energy, the momentum. And just that alone, it just gets me to where I need to go. It gets me to the gas station. Chad, you're so good at that. Like that's just such a superpower that you have, because you have such an awareness of how important that is.
Yeah, 100%. I think there's something to be said for just continually pouring into your own mental health and your own just self-talk, just encouraging yourself so your tank is full. So when you recognize or you see that opportunity to encourage somebody else, you're not just so weighted down by the circumstances around you that you can pour into somebody else. I try to get very sensitive to what my own conversation is in my heart, in my head. And if there's anything in there that is not helpful, isn't true, or is some kind of big blown up reality that isn't a reality, I flush that as quick as I can because it's not going to help me. It's not going to help my marriage. It's not going to help my family. And it's not going to help my business. So staying topped off allows me to pour into other people.
Well, and something else too is like if you start to make that a habit, it's part
Mm-hmm.
of your identity, like how you're pouring into people, the mindset. When that is like the root and the core of your identity, then when you have moments of weakness and you're wavering and you're uncertain and maybe the mind is running away from you a little bit, the enemy is kind of wiggling in. If your identity is rooted in like, hey, this is who you are. This is what we stand for. This is what you say, what you put out. This is what the world knows you as. It kind of holds you accountable even when nobody's around. It's kind of like this secret reserve tank where you're like, listen, I tell everybody this stuff every day. So unless I'm just like completely full of crap, like I need to start living up to the words that I'm sprouting out. And I'll be honest with you, man, like a large part of this podcast, the mindset portion of this podcast is for me to remind myself to like keep it in check, like to keep my mind between the rails, because that's the only thing that's going to get in my way of winning and not winning is like the space between my ears and the space between your ears. And I think when we realize that, when we realize how fiercely important mindset is and having control and capacity of your mind, it's like, okay, now we're going somewhere.
Yeah, and to dovetail into that and into your previous comment, the accountability portion that comes from those friendships around you, those people that are also in your tribe that are sharpening you and you're sharpening them, that accountability part is so important. And I think it's often missed. And when you allow somebody else to speak into your life and encourage you, you're opening up that additional level of accountability, but also encouragement. And both of those are so valuable that if they see something that's steering off course, they can call you on it. But they can also pour into you and say, man, I've seen what you're doing. I see what you're posting. I see the energy you're bringing. You're almost there. Like I'm standing on top of the wave and I'm seeing where you guys are about to get to. I know you're down at the bottom of the wave right now and you can't see it, but I see it. Just keep holding on. You're going to make it up here in a second. And that accountability portion is awesome.
Man, it's such a good analogy. I want to talk about something really quickly that you mentioned before. And it was, if one man can do it, like, why can others not follow? And are you familiar with the 4-minute mile? Kind of the history of the 4-minute mile. So the mile, like the running event, the mile, like the timed event was like this thing and nobody could break 4 minutes. Nobody. It was impossible. People would try and try and try. And for years, nobody could pierce the 4-minute mile. And one person did it, one. And as soon as that person broke the 4-minute mile, everybody else is running the 4-minute mile. Why? It's because everybody saw it's possible. If that guy can do it, I can do it too. And now everybody's running a 4-minute mile. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If one guy can do it, everybody else can too. And it's important to grab a hold of that and realize your potential. That raw potential is in all of us. We just have to believe it and tap into it and exercise it and walk towards it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as you pick somebody that's a couple levels above where you're at and you set your sights on what they're doing and you achieve that, you're stacking wins. So then you can start looking at that next level. Like the people that are running the sub 4-minute mile, they didn't go from a 10-minute mile to a 4-minute mile, right? They went from a 10-minute mile to a 9-minute to 8-minute and kept on just leveling up. And as you level up, you get surrounded by a new group of people that are going to push that next threshold. So absolutely, if one man can, so can I. And how many times have I spoke that over myself, over my situation, or spoke that over somebody else's situation? And there's so much power in that.
So I want to go back to the analogy of the sharpening stones. And I think it would be like really beneficial if we heard your story, because you have an interesting story in entrepreneurship. You've always been a business owner. You've had a couple careers. You were a welder at one point. You have this really cool company, Victory Landworks, right now. So your story's interesting. And I'm curious, like, when did you start to develop these ideas and implement them into your life of the sharpening stones? And then what impact did you notice in your personal life and in your business that came from that?
Yeah, so the 10,000 foot overview of my life, I come from a very stable family. My parents have been married for 42 years now, and just a phenomenal base to be able to grow off of. And I'm so, so blessed for that. My dad coming up on 50 years in the golf industry on the maintenance side. And my mom has the entrepreneurial thread in her that is really sewn into my life. And I always watched her start up different businesses. She would grow them and then sell them. And I thought that was just amazing that she could create something in her mind of, I'm going to achieve this and chase after it and then make it to a level that somebody would want to buy it. There's so much power in that mindset of, I want to grow this business to where it's so valuable, somebody else wants to buy it. And so I left home at 17 years old, moved up to the Pacific Northwest, decided I wanted to get in the fire service, and I chased that extremely hard. I was very, very successful. I was blessed to be around some phenomenal mentors that really helped push me and encourage me and give me opportunities, whether it was instructional opportunities, teaching at the State Fire Academy or teaching regionally for technical rescue. The people that poured into me and the opportunities they gave me it's truly why I can be in the position that I am with the mindset that I have, because I've seen that adversity. I've seen that imposter syndrome over and over and over again. Like you said, I crave that. As I started to get into the business side of things, the fire service is amazing. Like, it gives you a schedule that you can sometimes go home and you're not exhausted, but you have just enough energy. And firemen are typically the personality type that they want to do something else. They don't want to just spend their off day doing nothing. And so I just started businesses. I started to figure out something that I was interested in and started to build on that. The catalyst to that was actually injury in the fire department. And I got injured and had the realization that I might not be able to do this forever. And so that realization of, like, if I can't make it 30 years in the fire service and have that retirement that I'm banking on, I need to make sure I have another skill set. And so I started up the first business, which was a farrier and blacksmith business. So I worked with horses, and I also did ironworking, did decorative gates and ironworking for beautiful homes there in the Phoenix area, and had just an awesome experience with that. And the same thing, oddly enough, that came into my head on the fire service came into my head on the farrier work side, just getting beat up by horses. And so when we said, like, how many times have we not committed fully? I'm living proof that if you don't continually commit and keep pushing in there, like, you're going to feel these moments where you should have committed harder. You should have brought more people in. You should have pushed harder into something. And so as the realization came that I need to put myself into a business opportunity to where I'm not the person that's doing all the work all the time, and more of that visionary or that leadership position to bring other people that opportunity to do work to provide for their families. That's where we started getting into the land clearing portion. And we started our business up there in the Northwest, moved it down here to Mississippi. It's so rewarding to know that you can take a picture of something that you have in your head of a possibility for the future and build a framework, pursue it, give it everything you got to be able to reach that.
Do you notice a difference in the momentum and success of your businesses when you started implementing, like, this mindset of iron sharpens iron and leaning into mentorships and making yourself uncomfortable? Was that a progression, or was that something you accidentally stumbled on? When did you figure this out, and when did you start implementing it into your business, is the first question. And the second question is, do you notice a massive difference from implementing it and before not having implemented it into your business?
Yeah. So in the last couple of years, my goal in business just to push value into any situation that I come into. I want to show up and I want to provide value, whether that is a land clearing opportunity or a coaching opportunity or just a relational team building opportunity. And so we are constantly searching for people that are in a similar service that we can provide value to them so they can be successful. And I think as you continually go out there and you press into that, how can I provide value in this moment? How can I help this other business owner, help this client, help this group attain what they're trying to attain? It's amazing how that works out to your benefit, and it gets addictive, right? It gets so addictive of, like, how can I encourage this person? How can I help them and network with them to where they can reach that next level?
Yeah, and from that, like, some crazy fruit happens, the exponential growth that happens when you're just giving without the expectation to receive. I saw that you guys did a really cool project with mossy oak recently, which is, like, pretty crazy.
Yeah, so God has moved in some incredible ways for us when we moved down here, and leaving the fire service, especially leaving the fire service in the way that you and I did with the vaccine mandates and everything else, standing on our faith, standing on our beliefs and our convictions, and taking that all the way to the end. When we moved down here, there was a lot of uncertainties. We didn't have any family down here. We didn't have any kind of networks down here. And we just really felt like God was planting us here in this area for a specific purpose. And our heart has always been just use us, God. And whatever it is today, find a way for me to see where I can be used by you. And so God has created some very unique opportunities, some goosebump moments is what I call them, where we get to partner with people. And so whether that is just meeting people through the Mossy Oak Network, which Mossy Oak is a phenomenal family and brand, and they do so much for this area. They do so much for the hunting world itself, conservation, and just getting to meet those individuals and partner with some of them on some projects has been phenomenal. The other thing is this area is just full of outdoorsmen and outdoors women who want to create opportunities for their families. They want to create legacy for their families, and a lot of that comes through the outdoors and outdoor experience. And just the recreation world down here is phenomenal. And so there's a bunch of people that are running in the same direction. And as you take those blinders off, like I said, you start to see people that are pushing the same way and just reach out to them. And that's been awesome. God's moved through that big time.
Yeah. And to just kind of like touch on a point that you talk about, like part of your identity is you talk about, hey, don't try to get out of the trials you're in, but instead, like, try to get everything out of it that you can. And this is just a perfect example. And man, again, the audience is going to get so sick of me saying I'm a nature metaphor guy, but it's true. I relate everything to nature because it's like where I feel peace and at home. And I always think of like the buffalo, right? A herd of buffalo in a massive, gnarly, nasty storm. They do this like really interesting thing. They turn in and face the storm and they walk towards it, which is like this crazy phenomenon because a lot of animals like scatter and they hide and they run away. But the buffalo, they turn, they face it head on and they move in the direction of it. Just the strength of that, like the imagery of that, applying that to you and your business and not trying to escape the discomfort, but leaning into it, walking towards that adversity. Look what it's reaping. Like you're working with Mossy Oak in this crazy cool project down in the South in this new area and your business is exploding. I think there's something there and people need to start paying attention to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much value in understanding that as you try and escape adversity, you're prolonging it. You're really prolonging the pain that you're going to experience, the regrets you're going to have long term. And that moment where you flip the switch and you finally realize, if I run into this storm, I'm going to get the most out of it that I can. And I'm going to get out of it probably sooner. And I'm going to come out on the other side a stronger person for it. There's this pastor in Montana. His name is Levi Lusko. And Levi was one of the most influential authors of a book I read, Through the Eyes of a Lion. And the book is an amazing story. It has incredible pain involved. Levi and his wife lost their daughter to an asthma attack shortly after moving to Montana. And just the pain that they went through, the grief that they went through, but the lens that they went through it with is what makes the book just phenomenal. And that mindset of, I'm not going to try and just escape this storm because I can't ever outrun it. You can't ever outrun the grief of losing a child, but leaning into that and finding that area where God is going to take that trial and transform you and transform it, and that pain becomes your platform because of it. Like that is phenomenal. Anybody that has experienced grief knows how hard that can be. And it's amazing when you look at the big stories of people in this life and the ones that are so inspiring. It's usually the person that took that painful moment and they allowed that to become like the platform that they speak from, the service that they provide others, the message that they declare over other people's lives. There's so much power in leaning into that storm.
On paper, you're right. Like that needs to be how we react to like these types of situations and scenarios. But just like Mike Tyson says, like everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, right? Yeah. So how do you prepare? How do you prepare knowing that this grief, this agony is like on the horizon, that regardless of how good your life is right now, even if you can't see it, there's almost 100% chance that you're going to walk into a storm. It's inevitable. You cannot escape it. So how do we prepare ourselves for that storm that's on the horizon, that's coming?
Yeah, so Levi's big thing is train for the trial you're not yet in. And so if we know that this life is going to bring trials, it's going to bring pain, 100% certainty, no, we're going to lose somebody that's special to us, whether that's to death or a breakup of a relationship or whatever, if we can start to train for that trial prior to getting to it, then we'll have those stepping stones in place. We'll have those benchmarks that we know, okay, we can climb out of this, because if one man can, so can I, right? And so finding those stories that inspire you and just letting them become part of your life, become the message that you speak over your life, because you see that this is going to happen at some point. So if I could become so rooted in bedrock of truth, for me, that's the truth of the gospel, that's the truth of the Bible. But if we could become so firm in our foundation and on our values and in our mission, then as these trials and as these storms come, we're already anchored. We're not going to get blown apart because we have decided, we've declared over our life, this is the truth that I'm going to follow.
Yeah, I think you just like nailed it right there. It's rooting your identity into an immovable mass, right? Something that is like immovable. And when you're punched in the mouth and when you're defeated and when your mental capacity is just completely deteriorated, you're gonna fall to your highest level of training of like what's just the discipline, muscle memory, repetition. And if that identity is rooted in something that's immovable, then that's the action you're going to take. That's the path you're going to walk. And it's difficult. It's really difficult, but it's a lot better than being blown all over, not having anything to hold you down. My wife and I, the church we go to, we're in the book of Job. And Job's like this crazy, interesting story. It's like one of the oldest books in the Bible. And you look at it and you're like, what the heck is going on here? And you're almost left with like more questions than when you start reading the book of Job. When Job ends, you're like, well, hang on a second. I'm kind of more confused than when we started because we got no definitive answers and there's all this suffering. And it's really kind of trying to like dissect the lessons out of Job and apply it to your life. And something that we were talking about just the other day is the servant came to Job and was like, hey, man, all your kids are dead. Just so you know, all of them are dead. Job's response is like, well, I still have this robe. Like I still have more than what I was born with. God gave me and God can take it away. And we were talking like, what do you think you would do in the situation like we lost all of our kids? And it's rooting our identity in Christ and knowing that as much as we love these kids and as blessed as we are to steward these children, they don't belong to us. We're borrowing them. And having that knowledge of like, okay, if we're just borrowing these children, like we're blessed just with the time that we got from them. And here's this like crazy grief, the most astronomical grief I could ever think of as a parent. Because quite honestly, if my business failed, I mean, that sucks. If I lost all my money, bummer. But what do I value the most? What would I trade everything for anyways? It's this, it's my family, it's my children. And to have that all stripped away, like, how do you overcome that? It's the realization that it doesn't really ever belong to us. We're borrowing it. And I used to think about this in the military too. I read, there's this book called Gates of Fire, and it's like one of the most influential books, not fiction books. I've probably read this book 5 or 6 times. And there's a scene where they're marching into battle and they're outnumbered. The story of the Spartans, and the Spartans are invading Persian army and they're completely outnumbered. They know they're going to die. And there's this scene in the book that's like, how do you step forward? How do you overcome that fear and march towards that adversity? And one of the older mentors turns to one of the younger soldiers and says, well, this flesh does not belong to me. This bone does not belong to me. If I thought it belonged to me, I would never be able to advance 1 foot in the direction of the enemy. This belongs to all those who came before me, all those who will come after me. It belongs to the ideals that we're trying to build and preserve and the kingdom that we're trying to expand. And that always anchored into my brain of, oh yeah, this flesh does not belong to me. I choose my life. I move my feet. I pick a direction. But at the end of the day, this does not belong to me. And I need to remember that.
That is so good.
It's interesting because I've read this book, like I said, 6 times. And it's interesting because the first time I read it, I was a young team leader and I was taking my team over like a pretty heavy deployment schedule. And the things that I highlight, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense why I keyed in on this specific aspect of leadership. And then you read it again as like a little bit more mature leader. And I highlight a little bit different things. And then I read it post-military in college, and things that stick out to me are totally different. It's a really good book. And if you dissect it from the perspective of servant-based leadership, there's so many great lessons to learn. It's a completely fiction book. It has some historical based facts, but it's a fictional story. And there's just such good lessons to be pulled out of that book.
That is good. Yeah. And you mentioned Job a few minutes ago. One of my other favorite books in the Bible, it's one of the shortest ones, is the book of Habakkuk. And in Habakkuk 3, at the end, this prophet has gone through just some incredible adversity, incredible loss. And the final few verses of it, he goes into this repetition of, even though I will. And so, even though the fig trees don't blossom, I will praise the Lord. Even though the cattle are dead in the fields, I will praise the Lord. Even though I will. And that mindset has been so powerful for me, especially going through the situation at the fire department and moving down here. Even though God has pulled me from that, I will still glorify God. I will still praise God for what he is doing in me and through me and the opportunities that he's given. That ability to pull from verses or from stories or to take it from a non-scriptural aspect, Jocko Willink and his mindset of good and this thought of like, hey, something's coming at you and it didn't go as planned. And instead of sitting there and just dropping your shoulders and having a pity party, no, say good, right? Good. This is going to make me stronger. This is going to make me smarter. This is going to show the different areas of my life that I need to advance and become a better version of myself. This is going to show me a skill set I need to develop. Good. When we hit adversity, we need to say good. When we hit trials, we need to say good. And then just continually push through that.
The incipiency, like the beginning of that momentum, inspires others to follow in suit. You have to do the initial work of getting that boulder to move. But as soon as that boulder starts to roll, it's amazing how many people start following in those footsteps. To have the courage of, good, we're going to figure this out. All of a sudden, people are like, I'm going to go that way too. So, Chad, I want to talk about what you're moving into now, because you're so inspirational. You're such a good mentor. You're like coaching unofficially. You've always kind of had this skill set, this superpower, and there's an exciting new kind of direction happening in your life. And do you want to just kind of talk on that?
Yeah. So like I said earlier, some of the details aren't written in stone yet, but I have recently been contacted by a coach, Aaron Alandrino, the Fit Beard on Instagram. If you guys are looking for something to level up, somebody to follow, if you're looking for that tribe and you're not sure where to go, and especially if you're a man, like the Fit Beard, the guy's phenomenal. And I joined a class of his back a few months ago, and it was incredible. That investment that I made to open doors to unlock this next level for me has been phenomenal. I cringed a bit when I paid the money, like that hurt, but it got me into a season where now I'm getting into relationships and into groups that I didn't have access to before. And that's where this next step really comes from and the possibilities opening up. But we've started some conversation on what it would look like for me to join the High Value Man team, which is Aaron's team, and to really take the skill sets that God has given me in that coaching, in the encouragement, in the leadership positions that I've been entrusted with over the years, and what that would look like to be a coach, and particularly a coach that invests in men to become family men, to become men of God, and to become fathers of faith. And so that's where you probably saw the page launch yesterday for Father of Faith. And I launched this page not because I'm a perfect father. I am far from perfect. I have so much to learn. My kids teach me stuff every single day. And so I love moving into this next season of life, challenging myself, holding myself accountable, and really pushing that envelope of what does it look like to be a phenomenal husband, a loving and caring father, a leader and a lighthouse in your community? How can I myself become better in that? And how can I encourage others, coach others to do the same thing? And so that's where this next piece is really opening up. These doors are opening up, and it's really exciting. I'm fired up. The vision for High Value Men is that in 10 years, there will be 10,000 men that are kingdom men that are impacting the world around them, that we have impacted through our coaching, through our encouragement, through the accountability, and through the development of them. If we can touch 10,000, it's said that one person has the opportunity to touch 1,000 lives in their lifetime and somehow. And so with social media and everything else, if we're investing in one man, that's going to touch 1,000. If we invest in 10,000, that's going to touch 1,000,000. And if you touch 1,000,000 people, you're going to have kingdom impact in this world right now. And that is exciting. That's got me fired up.
Man, that is really exciting. And I'm really looking forward to following along with that journey and seeing what develops from that. How can people get in touch with you? Who do we follow on social media? Where do we find you? How do we get in touch with you? And then tell us about your Victory Landworks too.
Yeah. So number one, started up the page a couple days ago. So Father of Faith on Instagram, father.of.faith is the newest Instagram page. That is a page that if you want to find encouragement of how to become that next level of your fatherhood journey, or maybe you didn't have a dad and you're trying to find the blueprint of how you can have an impact on your kids or your future kids, that's my goal for the page, is to just push as much godly wisdom into that page as possible, be very transparent on my own part on how I'm growing, and just help other people grow. That's the first Instagram page. Chad at Victory Landworks is my personal page, and you'll see all kinds of stuff on there. You might see me sitting in a deer stand one day. You might see me cutting trees the next. You might see some video of me driving around the pickup truck with my kids. That's just a fun spot to have, just as an outlet to let people experience just the day-to-day life of an entrepreneur, a husband, a father, man of God. And it's kind of the random everything Chad's doing page. And then our business page is Victory Landworks. And so on Instagram, on there, you'll see us going out, and our goal is to give our clients that goosebump moment when they walk onto their new property, their new version of their property, and that they might encounter these moments where they get to see God's creation.
So if you had one parting word of advice or wisdom for somebody who's maybe looking at a storm on the horizon, or maybe going through some adversity right now, what would you leave them with to power through to get to the next day, the next month, the next level?
Man, for somebody that is in a storm right now, that's incredibly hard. I think that there's a couple different things that I would say. Number one is find those people in your life that you can lean into. Find the people that you can reach out to and just be transparent and honest with them, because most people aren't. Most people try and put this facade on that everything's okay and we're good and we don't have any problems. Every single one of us have problems. Every single one of us has a point in the year where we are burnt out, we're frustrated, we're angry. And I think more people need to be real and more people need to reach out. So don't be afraid to reach out. For number two is find people around you or find people in history that inspire you. Find a vision for your life is the biggest thing that you can focus on, and you can build a set of values that you'd have to attain that. So once you set your vision and you write out those values, I'm a man of faith. The next thing in my list is my family. Faith, family, fitness, finances. If I can pour into each one of those, and if I can stack one victory a day, if I can do one thing that moves the needle just a little bit ahead each day, at the end of the year, if I hit each of those, man, I'm going to be in such a better spot. So just that little bit of progress, leaning into people, asking for help, and just knowing that God's faithful. The sun is going to come up again tomorrow, and we get to have a new day at it.
And, on days that I think that you can't chalk up a win, just sitting in gratitude of what you do have, like just being grateful for your ability to breathe, your healthy body, your life, and then also just reflection of the journey, the trail that you've walked. But yeah. Chad, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today, and I'm looking forward to watching your journey and watching you win. So thanks for coming by. We will catch you next week. Looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.